let's stay on the job market for a second, because it's not all equal. It may be strong, but is it all equal? Black unemployment rate actually ticked up to 6.2%, despite the overall employment rate staying very low, and that was led by black women. So joining us now is the CEO of executive search firm Barrington Hibbert Associates. Michael Barrington Hibbert joins us now. Michael, we can talk about how positive the jobs number was, but it's not really positive for everybody. And first of all, thank you for sticking around for us. Can you give us some perspective as to what's actually happening on the ground?
Alex, well, thanks so much for having me, first and foremost. Look, I think there's three things keeping CEOs awake at night. Clearly, in your news story, the labour market is absolutely fundamental to that. We look at Ukraine and the impact of the energy prices, and also the third component is supply chain issues. Now, what we have seen pre-pandemic levels is that we have seen an upturn in terms of more black women, more Latino women coming into the workforce. And that's been based around, fundamentally, around the ability around to work from home.
That's really interesting, Michael. And so, does that mean there's a sort of demographic element to this, that it will, the impact, if we start to get really into a culture war here, Michael, where there's a whole argument at the extremes about whether work from home is a good thing or a bad thing, rather than settling around some sort of hybrid and some sort of more complex combination of the two, if it becomes politically polarized, does that have a demographic impact in terms of people's experience of unemployment?
Absolutely, and that's a fantastic question, Anna. Look, I think where we are right now, we have seen an over-index since 2020 when corporates, not just across the US, but across Europe, made commitments around black lives and black retention into the workforce. So over the last 2 years, Anna and Alex, we've seen programs around focused specifically around hiring. We've looked at initiatives around coaching, development, and as a consequence, we talk about how tight the labour market is. If we look at McKinsey's recent report across professional and financial services, we see at the entry level, 16% of talent going into professional and financial services is black. However, when you look at the exec level, it drops to 2.5%. So what you now have, you have an abundance of corporates after the same talent. So what does that mean? We are in the biggest labour imbalance in terms of supply and demand since World War II. So we're in a situation where we've got corporates going after a very small group in terms of talent. So what we're now seeing, we're seeing wages increase from anything between 2x to 3x at the moment for black females and Latino females in the US. So we are starting to see a convergence there in terms of demand and supply.
That's a really interesting insight, particularly if the pool gets larger because you can now also work from home. And that would also go a little ways to explain the higher unemployment rate. Will we see wages rise at the same kind of pace, though?
That's a great question. Look, what we're seeing, though, Alex, is people have the optionality to deselect from workforces. You've mentioned Elon Musk and his statements in terms of he wants folks back in the office full time. Now, if you're in a small pool of talent, and it's not just around black females, ethnic minorities, but you could be a developer, you could be a coder, you've got optionality to go to another organization. So what we're finding now is that skill sets which are in high demand are going to be paid more, but also we're seeing that they're having 2 or 3 options available to them.
And I imagine those kind of skills very valuable across different sectors. Michael, thank you so much for your time, and thanks again for sticking around, listening to President Biden talking about the labour market and taking that conversation forward for us. Michael Barrington Hibbert, the CEO of Barrington Hibbert Associates.